The United Earth Defense Fleet's smallest ship, the UES Pioneer, drifted at the edge of human space like a minnow among whales. Its weathered hull, barely 300 meters long, made it look like a tugboat compared to the kilometer-long vessels that typically patrolled these sectors. Captain James Walker stood at its bridge, his weathered hands gripping the command rail as he watched the massive alien fleet approaching through the main viewport. The Dominion's warships were works of art, sleek, purple-black vessels that seemed to absorb starlight itself. Their smallest scout ship was twice the size of the Pioneer, and their flagship, the Eternal Night, stretched nearly 5 kilometers from bow to stern. The aliens had been expanding their territory for decades, consuming lesser civilizations with their superior technology and overwhelming firepower. "They're hailing us again, sir," Lieutenant Anna Miller reported from her communications station, her voice tight with tension. "The Dominion commander says we have 10 minutes to surrender or be destroyed." Walker allowed himself a small smile. "Send no response." The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. They all knew the Pioneer specifications: a outdated fusion drive, minimal armor, and weapons that could barely dent a modern ship's shields. The vessel had been scheduled for decommissioning before the Dominion arrived at humanity's doorstep. "Sir," Commander Robert Thompson spoke up from Tactical, "their energy readings are off the charts. One shot from their main weapon could vaporize us." "That's assuming they can hit us, Commander." Walker's calm demeanor hadn't wavered. "Status of Project Reality?" Dr. Mark Peters looked up from his science station, where complex equations scrolled across multiple screens. "The quantum field manipulators are at 98% charge, Captain. But I must remind you, this technology is completely theoretical. We've never attempted to bend spacetime on this scale." "Theoretical is better than dead." Walker straightened his uniform. "And that's exactly why they sent us. The Pioneer isn't just the smallest ship in the fleet, we're the only one expendable enough to test this technology." The Dominion fleet was arranging itself in an attack formation. Their ships moved with perfect precision, like a school of predatory fish surrounding their prey. The aliens had encountered hundreds of civilizations, and their tactics had been refined through countless victories. They expected humanity to either surrender or attempt some foolish last stand with conventional weapons. They weren't prepared for what humanity had discovered in their desperate search for a defense against the seemingly invincible Dominion. "Project Reality at full charge," Dr. Peters announced. "The quantum field is stable, for now." Walker nodded. "Send the following message to the Dominion flagship: your assessment of human capabilities is flawed. We recommend you withdraw." The response was immediate, mocking laughter transmitted on all frequencies. The Dominion commander's voice boomed through the bridge speakers: "Your species' arrogance is amusing. One pathetic vessel dares to threaten our entire fleet? We will display your wreckage as a warning to others." "Dominion weapons charging," Thompson reported. "They're targeting our engine section." Walker's smile grew wider. "Initiate Project Reality. Let's show them why they shouldn't underestimate human ingenuity." Dr. Peters pressed his hand against the activation panel. The Pioneer's hull began to hum with energy as decades of theoretical physics research culminated in this moment. Humanity had discovered something the Dominion, for all their technological superiority, had never considered possible: the ability to locally alter the fundamental constants of reality itself. The massive alien fleet opened fire, their energy weapons lighting up space like artificial suns. But the Pioneer was no longer bound by normal physics. The quantum field manipulators bent probability itself, creating a bubble where the impossible became possible and the laws of nature became mere suggestions. Every shot fired at the Pioneer seemed to curve away at impossible angles. Space itself appeared to ripple and distort around the small human vessel, as if reality was having trouble deciding exactly where it should be at any given moment. The Dominion commander's next transmission contained no laughter, only confusion and the first hints of fear. The bridge of the eternal night erupted in chaos as the Dominion's most sophisticated targeting systems failed to land a single hit on the tiny human vessel. Commander Vex, a being of crystalline thought and cold calculation, felt an unfamiliar sensation crawling through his neural pathways: doubt. Impossible, he hissed, his translucent fingers dancing across the command interface. Recalibrate all weapons. That ship cannot be evading us through conventional means. But the Pioneer wasn't just evading, it was doing something that violated every principle of physics the Dominion had built their empire upon. Space itself seemed to fold and unfold around the human vessel like origami made of starlight. When their sensors tried to get a lock on its position, they reported that the ship was simultaneously in 12 different locations, all of them equally real and equally impossible. Back aboard the Pioneer, Dr. Peters stared at his readings with a mixture of horror and fascination. "Captain, the quantum field is creating cascading probability waves. We're not just bending reality, we're creating multiple overlapping versions of it." Walker gripped his command rail tighter as the ship shuddered. Not from weapon impacts, but from the strain of existing in multiple quantum states simultaneously. "Can the ship handle it?" "The hull is holding," Commander Thompson reported, though his voice carried an edge of disbelief. "But sir, you need to see this. Our weapons, they're showing as fully charged, but we never initiated the charging sequence." "That's because in one of our probability states, we did," Dr. Peters explained, his eyes wide with understanding. "We're not just avoiding their attacks. The quantum field is allowing us to access possibilities from parallel timelines. In some of them, we've been preparing to fight for hours." Walker allowed himself a grim smile. "Then let's show the Dominion what humanity's weakest ship can do when it has infinity itself as an ally. Target their lead destroyer." The Pioneer's modest weapon systems shouldn't have been able to scratch the paint on a Dominion warship. But when they fired, reality fractured like a kaleidoscope. Their single shot split into dozens, each one striking from a different angle, each one carrying the energy of a possibility where they had spent hours charging their weapons to maximum power. The Dominion destroyer's shields, designed to withstand conventional physics, crumpled under the assault of weapons that obeyed no single version of reality. The massive ship split apart in a spectacular explosion that rippled through multiple quantum states, creating an aurora of impossible colors. "By the eternal void," Commander Vex whispered, watching his supposedly invincible ship torn apart by what should have been an insignificant opponent. "What have these humans done?" Lieutenant Miller's voice carried a note of pride as she reported, "The Dominion fleet is falling into disarray, sir. Their formations are breaking up." "They're scared," Thompson added, allowing himself a small grin. "They've never faced an enemy they couldn't predict." But Dr. Peters' expression remained troubled. "Captain, the quantum field is becoming increasingly unstable. Each manipulation of reality creates more branching timelines, more possibilities we're drawing power from. If we don't disengage soon, we might tear a permanent hole in spacetime." Walker nodded gravely. "Send a message to the Dominion flagship. Tell them we can either end this now, or we can find out what happens when we push these reality distortions to their limit. Their choice." The response took longer this time. When it came, Commander Vex's voice had lost all trace of its former arrogance. "You have made your point, humans. To continue this battle would be unwise. We will withdraw from your territory." "A wise choice," Walker replied. "And Commander? Spread the word to your empire. Humanity may not have the biggest ships or the most advanced conventional weapons, but we have something far more powerful, the willingness to think beyond the impossible." As the Dominion fleet retreated, the Pioneer's crew watched in exhausted triumph. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in the size of their ships or the power of their weapons, but in their ability to challenge reality itself when backed into a corner. Dr. Peters began powering down the quantum field manipulators, his hands shaking slightly. Sir, you realize we've just changed everything? No one will ever look at human technology the same way again. That was the point, Doctor, Walker said softly. Sometimes the smallest ship can cast the largest shadow, especially when it casts multiple shadows across multiple realities. The victory celebration aboard the Pioneer was cut short by a series of alarming alerts from the science station. Dr. Peters' face went pale as he analyzed the incoming data. Captain, we have a situation. The quantum field manipulations we performed, they're having unexpected aftereffects. Walker moved to the science station, his expression turning grave as he studied the readings. The space around them was riddled with quantum instabilities, like cracks in the fabric of reality itself. Through these fissures, they could catch glimpses of other timelines, versions of events that might have been, or might yet be. The Dominion fleet is still visible on long-range sensors, Commander Thompson reported. But sir, I'm seeing multiple versions of them. Some appear to be heavily damaged, others completely intact. And in some readings, they're not there at all. Lieutenant Miller raised her hand to her earpiece, her brow furrowed in concentration. Captain, we're receiving transmissions, from ourselves. Different versions of the Pioneer, from different quantum states. Some are warning us about things that haven't happened yet. The implications were staggering. Their desperate gambit to defend against the Dominion had done more than just bend the rules of reality, it had shattered them. The boundary between what was possible and impossible had become disturbingly fluid. Sir, Thompson called out, his voice tight with urgency, one of the quantum echoes is showing the Dominion fleet returning with reinforcements. Massive reinforcements. But in another timeline, they're sending diplomats. And in a third. He trailed off, shaking his head in disbelief. Speak freely, Commander, Walker ordered. In a third timeline, sir, they're sharing their technology with us. Apparently, in that reality, our demonstration convinced them that humanity was worthy of joining their empire as equals, not subjects. Dr. Peters interjected, his fingers flying across his console. The quantum rifts are starting to stabilize, but they're not closing completely. It's like we've torn holes in the universe's rulebook, and reality itself is trying to decide which set of laws to follow. Walker paced the bridge, considering their options. Humanity had sought a weapon to defend against the Dominion, but they'd created something far more profound, a tool that could reshape the very nature of cause and effect. New contact. Thompson announced suddenly. Something's emerging from one of the larger quantum rifts. Sir, it's another Pioneer. But the quantum signature is different. More advanced. The view screen showed an identical ship emerging from what looked like a tear in space itself. But this version of the Pioneer gleamed with technology that seemed decades ahead of their own. They're hailing us, Miller reported. Audio only. Walker nodded, and a familiar voice filled the bridge, his own, but older, wiser, carrying the weight of experiences yet to come. This is Captain Walker of the UES Pioneer, Temporal Variant 2-7 Alpha, the voice announced. We've been monitoring your timeline. What you've done here has created ripples throughout multiple realities. The good news is, humanity survives. The bad news? Reality itself may never be quite the same. The bridge crew exchanged glances as their captain engaged in conversation with his alternate self. The other Walker explained how the quantum rifts had led to an arms race across multiple timelines, with various species attempting to replicate and counter humanity's reality-bending technology. But that's not why we're here, the alternate Walker continued. We've detected a critical quantum cascade forming in your sector. Left unchecked, it could cause a complete collapse of your local spacetime. We're here to help you stabilize it. Dr. Peters checked his readings and swore softly. He's right, Captain. The quantum field distortions are reaching critical levels. If they continue to grow at this rate, We'd be looking at more than just overlapping timelines, Walker finished. We'd be risking the complete dissolution of cause and effect in this region of space. As if to emphasize the point, several more quantum rifts appeared around the ship, each showing a different possible future. In one, Earth was a thriving center of a multi-species alliance. In another, it was a scorched ruin. The weight of infinite possibilities hung heavy in the air. The universe wasn't meant to handle this many contradictions at once, Dr. Peters said quietly. We need to make a choice about which reality we're going to stabilize, and we need to make it fast. Walker looked at the quantum rifts surrounding his ship, each one a window into a different possible future for humanity. The smallest ship in the fleet had changed the course of history, but now they had to decide which history they wanted to keep. The bridge of the Pioneer had become a nexus of possibilities, with quantum rifts showing dozens of potential futures swirling around them like a kaleidoscope of what-ifs. Captain Walker stood at the center of it all, watching as versions of humanity's future played out in each temporal window. We're receiving data packets from our future counterpart, Dr. Peters announced, his eyes widening as he processed the information. They're sending us detailed analyses of how each timeline plays out over the next century. It's overwhelming. The alternate Pioneer had taken up position nearby, its advanced sensors helping to stabilize the growing quantum cascade. Through their communications channel, the future Walker continued his briefing. In Timeline Alpha, humanity uses this technology to become the dominant force in the galaxy, but at the cost of widespread reality instability. In Timeline Beta, we form an alliance with the Dominion, leading to unprecedented technological advancement. Timeline Gamma shows us voluntarily sealing away the technology, choosing stability over power. Lieutenant Miller's console suddenly lit up with urgent signals. Sir, we're picking up temporal distress calls. Other ships caught in the quantum wake, they're experiencing time differently. Some are living through the same moment repeatedly, others are aging years in minutes. Commander Thompson's tactical display was a mess of overlapping sensor readings. The quantum cascade is affecting Dominion ships too. I'm seeing their vessels split into multiple quantum states. Some are attacking, others retreating, and a few appear to be evolving somehow. Walker moved to the center of the bridge, his mind racing as he processed the implications. Every choice they made now would ripple across countless realities. The wrong decision could doom humanity in 1,000 different ways. Dr. Peters, what happens if we do nothing? He asked. The scientist's hands trembled as he ran the calculations. The quantum cascade will continue to grow. Within hours, it will encompass the entire sector. Within days, the entire arm of the galaxy. Reality itself will become fluid, unpredictable. Cause and effect will break down completely. From the quantum rift, the future Walker's voice carried a note of urgency. You have to choose a timeline to stabilize, and you have to do it soon. But understand this, whatever future you choose becomes the primary reality. All other possibilities will collapse into quantum echoes. The weight of the decision pressed down on Walker like a physical force. In one reality, humanity became masters of the cosmos. In another, they gained powerful allies. In a third, they chose wisdom over power. Each choice carried its own consequences, its own prices to be paid. Sir, Thompson called out, the Dominion fleet, the present one, they're sending a transmission. Their commander wishes to speak with you. Walker nodded, and Commander Vex's image appeared on the main screen. The crystalline alien looked somehow different, humbled, perhaps, or simply changed by what they'd witnessed. Human, Vex began, his tone lacking its former arrogance, we have analyzed what is happening. Your species has done something that we, in all our centuries of advancement, never dared. You've broken the walls between what is and what could be. We offer our assistance in stabilizing this crisis. In exchange for what? Walker asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. in exchange for sharing this understanding with us. Not the technology, we've seen the dangers it presents, but the thinking behind it. Your species' unique perspective on reality itself. Dr. Peters spoke up, his voice quiet but firm. Captain, we're running out of time. The quantum cascade is approaching critical mass. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now. Walker looked around his bridge, at the crew that had helped him achieve the impossible. Then he looked at the quantum rifts, each showing a different version of humanity's future. The smallest ship in the fleet now held the power to determine which of these futures would become reality. The Dominion laughed at us, he said softly, because they thought size and conventional power were all that mattered. But humanity has always understood something they didn't. Sometimes the most important choice isn't about power at all. It's about wisdom. With that insight fresh in his mind, Walker prepared to make a decision that would echo across realities. The future of humanity, all possible futures of humanity, hung in the balance. The quantum rifts pulsed with increasing intensity, each one a window into a different possible future. Captain Walker stood motionless on his bridge, watching as reality itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his decision. The weight of countless futures pressed down upon his shoulders. "Sir," Dr. Peters called out, his voice strained, "quantum cascade is reaching critical levels. If we don't choose a timeline soon, the fabric of spacetime will begin to unravel permanently." His hands flew across the console, trying to maintain stability as reality fluctuated around them. The main viewscreen showed a kaleidoscope of possibilities. In one, Earth led a mighty empire. In another, they were respected allies of the Dominion. In a third, they had sealed away their reality-bending technology forever. Walker moved to the center of the bridge, his voice growing stronger with conviction. "Instead of choosing between these futures, we're going to create something entirely new." Lieutenant Miller's console lit up with incoming transmissions. "Sir, we're receiving signals from multiple temporal variants of both our ship and the Dominion fleet. They're all asking what we're doing." "Something impossible," Walker replied with a slight smile. "Dr. Peters, reconfigure the quantum field manipulators. Instead of trying to stabilize a single timeline, we're going to use the energy of the cascade itself to weave these realities together." Peters' eyes widened as he understood. "You want to create a hybrid timeline?" "Sir, the energy requirements would be astronomical. The mathematical complexity alone is exactly why no one has tried it before," Walker finished. "But our ship has already proven that size doesn't determine capability. Lieutenant Miller, open a channel to all temporal variants of the Dominion fleet." The screen filled with multiple versions of Commander Vex, each from a different timeline. Walker addressed them all. "We offer you a choice. Not surrender, not alliance, not war, but something new. A reality where both our civilizations evolved beyond what either of us thought possible." The various versions of Vex conferred among themselves, their crystalline forms shimmering with mixed emotions. Finally, the Prime version spoke. "You would risk reality itself on this gamble?" "Reality is already at risk," Walker countered. "But instead of trying to force it back into a single path, we're going to show you why humanity's greatest weapon has always been our imagination." Dr. Peters' hands danced across his console as he implemented Walker's plan. "Quantum field reconfiguring, sir, the energy patterns are shifting. The cascade isn't fighting us anymore, it's as if reality itself is curious about what we're trying to create." The bridge crew watched in awe as the quantum rifts began to pulse in harmony. Different versions of history started to merge, not chaotically, but in a carefully orchestrated dance of possibility. The smallest ship in the fleet was conducting a symphony of realities, creating something that had never existed before. "Timeline merger initiating," Peters announced, his voice filled with wonder. "The quantum signatures, they're synchronizing. It's working, Captain. We're not just choosing a future, we're creating one that takes the best aspects of every possibility." Through the view screen, they could see the changes beginning to take effect. The Dominion fleet seemed to shimmer and transform, their ships neither hostile nor submissive, but evolving into something that reflected a new understanding of the universe. Walker gripped his command rail as reality flexed around them. The Pioneer, once mocked for its size, was proving that the true measure of greatness wasn't in physical dimensions or firepower, but in the courage to imagine beyond the boundaries of what others thought possible. Reality rippled like water disturbed by a stone as the quantum merger reached its climax. The Pioneer hung at the center of the temporal maelstrom, its small frame somehow containing the power to reshape existence itself. Around them, the quantum rifts began to pulse with a harmonious energy that no one, human or Dominion, had ever witnessed before. Timeline convergence at 60%, Dr. Peters called out, his voice filled with wonder. The quantum signatures are, they're singing, Captain. There's no other way to describe it. Reality itself is resonating like a tuning fork. Through the view screen, they watched as multiple versions of the Dominion fleet shifted and merged. Ships that were destroyed in one timeline, diplomatic in another, and evolved in a third began to occupy the same space, their very nature changing as the new reality took shape. Lieutenant Miller's communications panel lit up with unprecedented activity. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from across time and space. The quantum merger, it's not just affecting our local sector. The ripples are spreading throughout the galaxy." Commander Thompson's tactical display showed the spread of the temporal wave. "The effect is accelerating, but it's stable. Every point it touches, it's like reality is remembering a past that hasn't happened yet, while simultaneously forgetting futures that will never be." On the main screen, Commander Vex's crystalline form flickered as different versions of himself merged into a single being. This sensation, we are becoming something new. Not conquerors, not allies, but partners in understanding the universe itself. The future version of the Pioneer began to fade from view, its mission now paradoxically both completed and rendered unnecessary. The older Walker's voice came through one last time, "You've done it. You've created something none of us thought possible, a future that transcends the very concept of winners and losers." Walker stood at the center of his bridge, watching as history rewrote itself around them. In the new timeline taking shape, humanity's first contact with the Dominion was transforming. Instead of an invasion fleet meeting a supposedly weak defender, it became an encounter between two civilizations about to learn extraordinary things from each other. "Memory integration beginning," Dr. Peters announced, holding his head as new recollections began to surface. "We're all going to remember both timelines, the original one and the new one we've created. The human mind, it's adapting to hold multiple sets of memories simultaneously." The crew experienced it together, the strange sensation of remembering two different pasts at once. In their original memories, the Pioneer had been a last-ditch defender. But now they also remembered it as a ship of exploration, its revolutionary quantum drive marking it as humanity's first successful experiment in reality engineering. "The Dominion ships," Thompson reported, "they're changing configuration. Their weapons are transforming into research arrays? Scientific equipment?" Miller nodded, new memories flowing into her mind. "Yes, in this timeline, they came to study the quantum phenomena we discovered. Their empire was built on understanding, not conquest. We've been working together for years, even though we also remember meeting them for the first time today." The quantum rifts began to close one by one, but they didn't vanish completely. Instead, they left behind what Dr. Peters called quantum echoes, small, stable anomalies that served as reminders of reality's fluid nature. "It's done," Dr. Peters said softly, looking at his final readings. "The new timeline is stable. We've created a reality where humanity's greatest achievement wasn't defeating the Dominion, but showing everyone, that the universe is far more magnificent and mutable than anyone imagined." Walker smiled, feeling the weight of two sets of memories settling in his mind. The Pioneer, the smallest ship in the fleet, had done more than save humanity. It had proven that true strength lay not in the size of one's ships or weapons, but in the boldness of one's vision and the courage to reshape reality itself. 1 month after the quantum convergence, the UES Pioneer docked at the newly constructed Quantum Research Station, a massive facility jointly operated by humans and the Dominion. The station itself was a testament to the new reality they'd created. Its architecture blended the crystalline aesthetics of Dominion design with the practical functionality favored by humans. Captain Walker stood in the station's observation deck, watching as ships from both civilizations moved through space together. The Pioneer, still the smallest ship in the human fleet, now bore subtle modifications that reflected its unique status: quantum field stabilizers that glowed with a gentle blue light, a hybrid reactor core that drew power from multiple probability states, and hull plating that shimmed with Dominion crystal technology. The latest results from the quantum integration studies are in, Dr. Peters said, joining his captain at the window. It's fascinating. Every person in the galaxy now carries memories from both timelines, but instead of causing confusion, it's led to unprecedented insights. People can literally remember learning from mistakes they never actually made. Commander Thompson approached with a data pad. The joint fleet exercises are showing remarkable results. Dominion ships are incorporating our quantum field technology, while we're adapting their crystalline computing systems. But sir, that's not why I'm here. He handed the pad to Walker. These are the new specifications for the Pioneer-class vessels. Walker scrolled through the document, his eyes widening. They're building more? Dozens, Thompson confirmed. But not as warships. They're being designated as research vessels, reality exploration ships. The Dominion is building them too. They've finally understood that size isn't what makes a ship special. Lieutenant Miller arrived with her own report. Sir, the quantum echoes we left behind are doing something unexpected. They're not just remnants of the merger, they're becoming natural laboratories where the laws of physics are more flexible. Scientists from both civilizations are calling them possibility engines. From the observation deck, they could see one such quantum echo, a shimmering region of space where reality was slightly more malleable than normal. Research ships from various species gathered around it, studying the phenomenon that humanity had inadvertently created. Commander Vex's crystalline form materialized nearby, his presence now a welcome sight. The Dominion leader had become humanity's strongest advocate in the galactic community. The Council of Species has reached a decision, he announced. The quantum merger you initiated has been officially recognized as the most significant scientific achievement in known history. Not because of its power, but because of what it represents. And what's that? Walker asked, though he already knew the answer. The recognition that true advancement comes not from dominating reality, but from understanding it deeply enough to see its infinite possibilities. Vex's crystalline form sparkled with amusement. We laughed at your small ship, never realizing that its size was irrelevant. The greatest vessels in history are not those that carry the most weapons, but those that carry the most revolutionary ideas. The observation deck filled with both human and Dominion crew members as a ceremony began. The Pioneer was being officially redesignated as the first of a new class of ships, quantum explorers. Its mission would no longer be defense or war, but the investigation of reality's deepest mysteries. You know what the most interesting part is? Dr. Peters mused as they watched the proceedings. In the original timeline, we were desperate, using this technology as a weapon. But in doing so, we proved something far more important, that the universe is stranger and more wonderful than anyone imagined, and that the greatest victories don't come from destroying your enemies, but from transforming them into friends. Walker smiled as he watched his small ship receive its new designation. The Pioneer had lived up to its name in ways no one could have predicted. It had pioneered not just new technology, but a new way of thinking about reality itself. The Dominion laughed at humanity's weakest ship, he said softly, but we showed them something that all their power and technology had never taught them, that in a universe of infinite possibilities, the strongest force isn't the ability to destroy or dominate, but the courage to imagine and create something entirely new. As if in response to his words, the quantum echo near the station pulsed with prismatic light, a reminder that in this new reality they'd forged, the distinction between possible and impossible had become wonderfully, permanently blurred.